We're going to check out some futures bets for the NBA next season, 2021-2022. So after 1 week of maneuvering and dealing that definitely was not agreed to weeks in advance, virtually every notable free agent now is off the board. And now on the DK Sportsbook, you can place futures bets on who you think will lead the league in certain categories. So Nick, let's start with you here. Let's start with the scoring leader. Bradley Beal is the odds-on favorite at plus 275. Would he be your pick as things stand right now?
I think he's the safest pick. I mean, he's the only guy of the true available options, who's back-to-back 30-plus points in each of the last two seasons. So it makes sense that he's the leader here at plus 275. Obviously, you're removing Russell Westbrook, an extremely high-usage player, from that roster, and Beal was still able to average 30 a game playing alongside Westbrook last season. So, you brought in some parts, to replace Westbrook, but nobody who's going to come in and have that kind of usage rate. So on paper, Bradley Beal makes a ton of sense at plus 275. I think you have to consider Luka at plus 425. Got off to a slow start last season that kind of put him behind the eight ball, but over the second half of the season, he was scoring as well as anybody. Obviously, that was on display in the Olympics. It was on display in the first round of the playoffs as well. I also don't think you could quite discount Steph Curry. And I understand, he led the league in scoring last year. I get why he's down at 6-1. You have Klay Thompson coming back. The Warriors should be a little bit more of a balanced team, but he's won an MVP. He's won a scoring title with a fully healthy Klay Thompson, with a fully healthy Draymond Green. We've seen him average 30 a game before in those circumstances. I wouldn't necessarily bet on it now. He's in a little bit of a different phase of his career. That was back in 2015-16, the 73 win season, but I'm not totally counting out Steph Curry.
All right, Kenny, we're talking 31.3 points per game from Beal. That was a career high for him. And now he no longer has Westbrook there. So would you believe he could be you agree with the odds-on favorite here? Plus 275, going to be the scoring leader.
I do. I think that this Wizards team is going to be really good. And you look at Spencer Dinwiddie coming in, helping Bradley Beal perhaps get some space, Kyle Kuzma as well. And then perhaps a step forward for Hachimura. I think that this was a team that, we saw make a lot of strides last year, aside from Russell Westbrook. Of course, he padded his stats, but there were plenty of good stories here. Bertans as well, a guy that is just going to make life easier, take some attention away from Bradley Beal. And the fact of the matter is he is going to be able to take pretty much any shot he wants. This is his team now. So, you do like those odds, but as Nick mentioned, I think that Steph Curry at plus 600 is still a pretty good bet. I'm a little weary of that though, but the value is certainly there. I would even look as far down as plus $3,500 or plus 3,500. You got Devin Booker, who, 13th in points per game last year and was up there 7th in total points. Perhaps this is a season where he takes even another step forward. He just continues to get better and better every year. We saw in the postseason this year what type of scoring outputs he's capable of. The inconsistency is obviously the concern there, but I think that that's a really, really good value for a guy that's clearly the leading scorer on his team. And perhaps even this year, Chris Paul takes a little bit of a step back, which would be ridiculous for a guy making, $40 million? But hey, maybe he doesn't take as many shots. Maybe Devin Booker gets a few more field goal attempts per game. And then you get him at a really, really good price to win the scoring title. I wouldn't hate that.
All right, let's go to the assist department here, gentlemen. DK Sportsbook has James Harden as the minus 105 favorite, right ahead of his former teammate Russell Westbrook, who was at plus 200. So Trae Young kind of lurking there in the shadows at plus 400. Which bet makes sense for you here, Nick?
Harden's the heavy favorite for a reason here. Minus 105 is kind of crazy when you compare it to where the other leaders or, the odds-on favorites, I guess I should say, are for these other categories. And it's for good reason. The guy he's been primarily competing against for this title for the last few years in Russell Westbrook is now paired up with the guy who won the assist title 2 years ago in LeBron James. So we saw Westbrook and Harden play together in Houston. Westbrook's assist rate plummeted. He was down in like the 7-8 assists per game as opposed to 10 or 11 where he was in OKC. LeBron teaming up with Westbrook knocks both of those guys out of the race. So for me, it has to be Harden. His usage rate was under 20% when he joined the Brooklyn Nets, and Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving were healthy. So small sample size, but he basically was very much content to just stop the step back threes, stop shooting 20 times per game and essentially become a distributor. And we're going to see better health luck with that team this year. They're not going to play like 5 games together over the course of the regular season. As long as those guys are healthy for even 70 or 75% of the year, I think Harden is happy to sit back, be a distributor, rack up, 10.5, 11.5 assists per game.
Okay, Kenny. Harden is on the Nets and Russell Westbrook now on the Lakers.
Yeah, I think that Russell Westbrook is a very, very good value play here, plus 200. I know that you like to, go for bigger odds, but when you talk about the post All-Star break NBA, it was dominated by Russell Westbrook and his assist rate. I mean, it was almost 50%. This guy goes out of his way to get assists. He goes out of his way to throw dart basketballs at players' heads, so they have a hard time catching it, and then they'll get him an assist. I think that this is a guy that is going to take the step forward here for the Lakers, and LeBron probably takes a step back in terms of being a distributor. We saw at the end of the year last year, LeBron James became more of a distributor in the postseason, in the second half of the season. But for the majority of the year, LeBron James is not going to be out there, playing 40 minutes a game, racking up 10 assists. That's just not what he wants to do at this stage of his career. He wants to save himself for the postseason. I think that Russell Westbrook is going to have a big chip on his shoulder. I think that he is going to really maybe play his best basketball that we've seen in quite some time, maybe since he came into the league with Oklahoma City. I believe that because we heard about the egos being put aside. We heard about, these guys just being motivated to win a title. I think that Russell Westbrook comes out here, and we know that he's one of the best passers in the league, one of the best assist mans in the league. I think that, there's every reason to believe that he does this. And James Harden, we had the injury concerns in the postseason. We have Kyrie Irving as, one of the ball dominant guys in that offense as well. I think that there's obstacles in the way of James Harden getting there. And I don't think that there's as many for Russell Westbrook. I think LeBron James is likely to take a step back when it comes to passing the ball. And I think plus 200 is probably my bet here.
All right, finally, gentlemen, let's look at the leader for three-pointers made. Steph Curry, who Nick has mentioned already, is the obvious favorite here at minus 165. But if you had to look somewhere other than the $200 million man, where would you be looking, Kenny?
Well, it's hard because you look at last season, Steph Curry had 337 made threes, and the next best was Buddy Hield, over 50 behind him at 282. Now, Buddy Hield is rightfully so, plus 550, right there towards the top. It's hard to bet against Steph Curry. The only thing that's obviously going to change this year is that Klay Thompson's coming back. That's going to cut into his lead. If I had to take a guy to make the most threes, maybe it's Duncan Robinson at plus 1,100, just to have some fun with this bet. He was there in third place or fourth place in threes made, but right there with Damian Lillard. There's a clear, obvious reason why he's on the floor, and it's just to shoot a bunch of threes. I could see him, taking so many and hitting this. So I think that it's kind of unwise to bet against Steph Curry just with the sheer volume of shots, even with Klay Thompson coming back. And we've seen with Klay Thompson in the lineup, he's still done this. He's still led in this category. But if I'm going to get a little crazy, it might be Duncan Robinson at plus 1,100 because the Heat seem like they're going for it this year, and maybe he gets a little more space to shoot the ball.
Cuckoo, Kachu, Mr. Robinson. Nick, what say you, man? Three-pointers made. Talk to me.
I think Kenny said it best when he mentioned that it's kind of a fool's errand to bet against Steph Curry. It's not fun to just say bet Steph Curry, but he won this category by 1.2 made three-pointers per game last season. That's the same differential as number 2, Damian Lillard, who's at 4.1, and number 17, Jason Tatum, who's at 2.9. So even if you're factoring in a little bit of regression with Klay coming back, there's still a monster gap between Curry and the rest of the field. So, if it's my actual money, I'm betting on Steph Curry. Lillard at plus 380 is not terrible value for a guy who might just be in a situation where he has the license to gun away for a team that really didn't improve all that much this offseason and really felt like it needed to improve. So I could kind of see him, going somewhat rogue, a guy who already takes a ton of threes, just jacking up. Instead of 10.5 a game, he's at 13 a game. And percentage-wise, he's not that far from Steph, so that would put him up there. It's been Curry, Lillard, and Hield essentially at the top the last 3 years. So, those are the three guys to consider. Robinson is a step below for me. He was at 3.5 per game last year. So, about a half a three or 0.6 behind Lillard and Hield. But he can certainly be in the mix. The thing with Robinson is he just, he doesn't quite have that same ability to just, dribble the ball up the court, take a pick and roll and just launch. He kind of needs guys to create for him. He still takes a ton of threes in that role, but unlike Lillard and unlike Curry and unlike Hield to a slightly lesser degree, he just doesn't have quite that same green light at all times whenever he has the ball.